Wow. You've got the pressure of double Gunner, but 2 VMAX in the prizes.
Yeah, and Benjamin pricing Radiant Greninja is a big piece now that you don't have that early game aggression that you usually have with the Shady Dealings at line, that it's no longer in the standard format. So be interesting to see how both of these players navigate around these prize cards.
Yeah, we know that the threat of Moonlight Shuriken being used with Star Portals also a big part of Palkia's play and early threat generation for these matchups. So overall, the prizes are looking a little bit awkward for both of these players, Ethan.
I'm excited to see how this goes. This is going to be a new learning experience for me. I've played a lot of the standard format, but I can't say I've played this specific matchup a number of times to say who is favored. You've got to imagine up against this deck, having the aggression of Ice Rider Calyrex in combination with something like the Moonlight Shuriken, as you mentioned, can set math up. There's nothing like Manaphy in this deck to prevent bench damage, so Radiant Greninja can start setting up this math, which usually is something that I hear the Rapid Strike Inteleon decks say. But regardless, let's get into this here. Round number 7, Benjamin Nackman up against Kasten Welsh. And what a perfect way to start the turn off. Nest Ball. I've got to imagine you're looking to not only get Remoraid out, but of course, you see your opponent flip over a Drapion. This is something we don't talk about a lot. Deck information. Now, assuming both these players don't know what each other is playing, setting up your board can be a bit tricky. Of course, you know there's a few decks your opponent's not playing. Your opponent most likely is not playing something like Mew VMAX in their deck, because that would be a little weird to be playing Drapion. We've seen it before. Hey,
we've seen it before. Mew VMAX can run everything, including Drapion at this point.
But additionally, you've got to think about what your opponent is playing when you set up, because even with a deck like this, you're going to set up differently depending on what matchup your opponent is playing. Regardless, though, Octillery is the card that this deck's surrounded around. Rapid Strike Search is the most powerful ability in this deck, searching out anything from your Pokemon to your energy cards in Rapid Strike Energy.
Yeah, it had a really solid run for its time. Octillery doing tons of work for this list, and even though the Inteleon VMAX is in the prizes, 2 of them, 2 Tower of Waters in the prizes, finding those third copies with the Octillery is really all you need to get your plan up and running. And once you start taking those prize cards, you just kind of, jailbreak those missing copies and have that utility going forward to close out the game. Just going to be a bench on the Remoraid into a pass, and this could be what you were talking about, Ethan, where maybe you don't want to extend, you don't want to commit to a specific bench configuration till you have a little bit more information about Benjamin's list.
I have to imagine what's going through your head here if you're Kasten. You've played against some, sure, a plethora of decks, Lost Box, Gardevoir, a bunch of different decks. They fist bumped here over something. I'm not sure I quite caught that, but point still being, your opponent, first thing they do is they Ultra Ball and they get rid of Empoleon. I got to wonder, what does my opponent play? What could this possibly be?
And then just a Luminion, really holding it back. Grabs Irida off of Luminous Sign to find Battle VIP Pass, and the Radiant Greninja's in the prizes. That's the other water Pokemon you really love to grab off of Irida.
So this sort of engine has existed. Of course, we saw at the World Championships, top 16 placings of this Ice Rider Calyrex with B-Barrel and Palkia, but a few cards this deck did lose that I think is important to mention. One big card is Capacious Bucket, able to grab 2 water energy out of the deck. A great card, especially because Irida could find that. Another thing to note, with the change in Scarlet and Violet, item cards are no longer tool cards. Tool cards are in a different category, so something like Irida cannot grab cards like Choice Belt to find math, to get math going.
Yeah, that's
These
an excellent
cards are
reminder.
Important things to note, and now you've got to play cards like Energy Search, which are nowhere near the same power level.
So Benjamin does get the full bench set up thanks to that Battle VIP Pass, has a Bidoof ready to go, and an Ice Rider Calyrex. It's back over to Kasten, who does get the evolution, finds that third Inteleon VMAX, and now here comes Irida. Grabs an item card and another water Pokemon, has the Octillery already eyed down, ready to go.
And already queuing up the Rapid Strike Energy to the top of the deck. Pretty much going to be an instant grab to start putting some pressure on these Pokemon, putting some damage into play.
And what's the item, do you think, Kasten wants to grab here to kind of fix what is going on here? Just another Nest Ball? Sure, why not? Maybe get the Rapid Strike Urshifu V.
Yeah, this deck still requires you to get down a fair bit of Pokemon. Having a couple of Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX in the hand, so wanting to get that evolved seems like a pretty reasonable explanation here. I believe the Irida was actually the top deck for turn. Does have that Forest Seal Stone in hand.
Nice.
So that could potentially grab some pieces later down the line. There's really not a lot going on in this hand. Just some energy retrievals and a few ways to get some Pokemon into play potentially. But of course, having Octillery once per turn, you do get the ability to search out these specific pieces. And interestingly enough, grabbing the Ultra Ball instead, have to wonder, The reasoning for going for a card like this over grabbing Nest Ball, which later on in the game can be a little bit better, and actually deciding to get rid of the Metacham instead of putting that into play. We'll have to find a way to recover that later on.
I guess that when you look across the board, right, you see a bunch of Pokemon V. These are things that are going to be very difficult to get set up for the Yoga Loop. You really want to just use that in the single prize matchups. So it's just going to get rid of that now, discarding the Urshifu VMAX. Looks to just be relying much more heavily, right, on this Inteleon VMAX for now. At least gets one Urshifu V, and hopefully Rapid Strike Surge can do a little bit more heavy lifting with the Forest Sealstone.
Well, the thing to think about as always is, I mean, it's been a while since we've talked about Palkia and mirror matches. I mean, me and you casted at the World Championships, the final match in the juniors division. It feels like that was yesterday that happened. But the thing to remember, bench space is important. When Subspace Swell deals more damage, the more bench Pokemon you put into play. Maybe Kasten is thinking, if I put another V Pokemon into play, right, with a full bench that puts me at 220 damage, is that a risk I'm willing to take? Or am I okay just doing some damage? 140 with Gmax Spiral.
Yep, put that attached energy right back into the hand. Just keep that loop going. The Drapion V just kind of stranded in the active spot. This does give Benjamin a little bit more time to get set up, get these Pokemon evolved, get them powered up with energy. But at the end of the day, you're still giving up the first two prizes of the game if you're really going to let things go. So there's the attach of the Choice Belt. Then you're going to use the Lost Vacuum to immediately just send that to the Lost Zone to get the hand thinned down to set up for Industrious Incisors. Benjamin draws back up to 5. See one water energy in the hand, but not too much else going on.
Yeah, there's nothing going on. I think this Drapion is going to be chilling on the active at the end of this turn. There is absolutely nothing. And sure, it's great to be able to fill your hand up with B-Barrel, but this is the problem when Shady Dealings and Inteleon would just find you your specific pieces. You don't have that luxury. You're at the mercy of what the B-Barrel wants to bring home for you at the end of the day. Get some big pieces of wood, get some Iridas in there, or if he's going to come back with nothing at the end of his look.
Yep, this is a hand-carved energy search, finding a water energy now. And so now we've got a little bit of an attachment here, but the important thing, too, we got to get these into the discard pile to set up that star portal to have some sort of offense from this position. Kasten might even recognize, hey, turns out this Drapion is stranded. So now I'm just going to start using Double Gunner to start softening up the bench. You know you're going to have to make it through a Dialga V-Star. You know you're going to have to make it through an Ice Rider Calyrex V-Max. Massive HP pools that aren't going to be giving up the prizes you really want.
This is really interesting. My mind right now is I'm thinking right now about this energy attachment here and what this provides in terms of this.
Please knock out Drapion so I can send this to the discard pile.
But the problem is, I mean, you can at least get an energy attachment potentially down onto these Origin Form Palkia to not have to use your V-Star power. But maybe Benjamin's thinking if this gets stranded here for some reason, but we'll have to see if this energy pacing ever matters later in the game. Research is just going to draw more cards. You've got the guaranteed energy attachment. In fact, putting it on the Urshifu instead. So I have to think for Benjamin, did you see this play coming with the Urshifu? Is this the idea behind here? I have to imagine that's possibly it, but I mean,
it's dangerous, right? Yeah. Because even though the Inteleon VMAX is kind of just enjoying being the aggressor, generating a lot of tempo right now, it's still going to give up 3 prizes when it goes down. So if Benjamin is able to pull up some sort of combo with Star Portal, get a big attack through, then you are just going to be irreparably behind. So you have to prepare this Urshifu VMAX as well, and we'll see if Kasten wants to push the limits a little bit of leaving this Inteleon VMAX in the active spot, going for another Gmax Spiral, maybe trying to set up the Double Gunner, or if it immediately we're going to see like Gmax Rapid Flow or maybe Gale Thrust.
And one thing to note as well, Pokemon of big liability here, that Lumineon V. It's got 170 HP. It's very low. It's very viable. It can be put together in a single turn potentially with the Alakazam Painful Spoon to move damage counters on. If you can utilize 2 Double Gunner abilities, you can put that to 150, 160 damage, and a Gmax Rapid Flow can set that math up. Or the other way around, right? Hit it with Gmax Rapid Flow, finish it off with some Double Gunner abilities. Of course, it does have that Aqua Return attack, so can go back into the deck, but the only way that's happening is if you're utilizing your V-Star power. Feels like a big investment at that point.
Yeah, the threat of the Painful Spoons, the threat of Double Gunner shows why Benjamin doesn't want to just retreat this Drapion or try to get it out of the active spot. You want this to go down so it's not a liability later on in the game for Kasten to maybe take a 4 or 5 prize combo turn.
Star power being used, finding Escape Rope, and this is going to punish that energy attachment onto the Drapion. what do you bring up in this position? Everything seems bad. You bring up Ice Rider Calyrex. It means if you ever want to VMAX it, you're pretty much giving up extra prizes at that turn, especially with B-Barrel in play. You bring the Palkia up, that's your main attacker that you want. You bring Luminion up, that's a Pokemon that's easily frail, can get knocked out with Double Gunner potentially the following turn.
I thought it was going to be the Ice Rider, but actually reconsiders onto the Origin form Palkia.
I mean, no choice is great in this position. I think Palkia was also technically okay if you could at least evolve it, but then if you evolve it again, you set your prize mapping up very easily for your opponent. Knock out B-Barrel, knock out Ice Rider Calyrex, knock out Drapion. And that would pretty much be it. So this seems like potentially the best choice of them all.
Yeah, nice Gale
fire
Thrust.
some damage up, but what is the top deck for turn? Again, is not anything you want. You've got a choice of benching either this Palkia V, which now you have to with this one being damaged. There's your attachment. It could have been 2 on the active potentially. And here we go. Industrious Incisors for 2 cards. Trekking shoes.
This is a tough decision. I didn't get eyes on that card. What could it be?
I feel like if it's not something that's allowing you to attack this turn, you've got to discard it and go for another. You're already so behind in this game. And there it is. Melanie discarding it. And
finds an escape rope.
Yeah, but that escape rope doesn't do anything. If you're Benjamin here, you're in round 7, you really don't want to tie. I think it may even be time to just scoop it up. I mean, what happens if this doesn't? I mean, look, it's very clearly put out here. A single energy attachment means G-Max Rapid Flow will take 4 prize cards next turn.
Exactly.
Luminion is still on the board. It can be taken care of potentially in a single turn with Boss's Orders and a Double Gunner ability to do 170 to it with the Gale Thrust. All you're doing is pretty much counting down the time till you lose this game. And yeah, there we go. Ben makes a very smart choice, picking things up. And this is good awareness. 40 minutes is still plenty of time to play 2 more games.
Normally it would feel so bad, right? To take a bunch of attacks that aren't getting knockouts, but this is what the deck wants to do. You don't worry so much about needing to hit very specific attack numbers because as long as you're dealing decent chunks of damage everywhere, your deck is designed to capitalize on those later on. So Kasten looking very happy to take an easy game 1, has demonstrated what this list can do for the matchup, and Benjamin really regretting not having that Inteleon engine, no more shady dealings, really struggling to get set up at all.
Speaking of Inteleon, Kasten showing Benjamin the unfortunate news of the Inteleon and the prize cards, and both players having a little bit of fun at the table. That's what Pokemon's about, is having a good time playing it out. Even though the stakes are high, both these players still had a very solid record.
That's a really good point, Ethan. The prizes for Kasten were a little bit touch and go, right? 2 Tower of Waters, 2 Inteleon VMAX. Fortunately found that 3rd copy to even get the attacker up and running. And what's nice too is just the attachment of Rapid Strike energy. Having it account for 2 energy gives you so much flexibility and tempo to get these strong attacks out very quickly. And then just the combination of discarding the water energy with energy retrieval, it's just a great list. And I'm glad that, Inteleon can shine for a little bit, because I remember it's a weird cycle where Inteleon VMAX would show up at a random regional, do okay, but maybe not really make day 2, but just kind of demonstrate what it is capable of. And in a format like this, where your opponents aren't being incredibly aggressive, in a format where your opponents are taking more time to get set up, a la Gardevoir, you can, get a lot of value out of Double Gunner.
Quickly, briefly showcasing the prizes there. Nothing of too relevant to note. Just a Clara on the prizes is the main thing that stood out there for Kasten. Did have another Inteleon VMAX prize, but nothing too relevant besides that. And look at that. Big find there off the concealed cards. Very excited to get that into play. And I would be too when you've lost game 1 in pretty quick fashion, and you've got to get something to bail you out. Luckily, it does have a good amount of stage 1 Pokemon in the hand. Already seen the B-Barrel, and Palkia is always something you want to get down on turn 1, especially if you don't have another attachment to go case. But I mean, listen, Battle VIP Pass is as strong of a card and as popular of a card and as meta-defining of a card as it is, because when you hit it on turn 1, you are that much more ahead, or you are that much more in the game than you would be with something mediocre like Nest Ball.
This feels great too, because you can take the time with the Battle VIP Pass to get the Bidoof set up. You don't have to go for double Palkia to have that aggression or that protection towards one of them getting sniped down. You know that, again, this Rapid Strike Urshifu deck doesn't hit big numbers, so that Palkia V is safer. Kasten now going to open up with Hisui and Heavy Ball. Take a look in the prizes. There are no basic Pokemon there to grab, but it's just going to get some quick info about what is there after all. Professor's Research, a Clara. Just plan your matches accordingly, especially with the Rapid Strike energy.
Information is a very solid skill to have in the Pokemon TCG. Knowing what cards are available, of course, these prize cards are inaccessible until you take these knockouts. So having information allows you to make plays where you maybe play a little bit more aggressive to try to take these prize cards. Or you can, of course, know what they're in there, write them down somewhere, have that information. You can always check your deck, but it's going to save you time as well. And time is money in the Pokemon TCG. You got 50 minutes to play 3 games.
And that's why Benjamin scooped so early in game number 1. And as we're into game number 2, 35 minutes left on the clock, Kasten Welsh also has the Nest Ball, and now can take a truly deep look into the list, see how I want to plan this one out. The Remoraid being grabbed to set up Octillery. We know the Rapid Strike Search is key for getting these continuous Gale Thrusts, the Double Gunners, etc. And I love that the Remoraid has been grabbed so consistently. This is immensely important, Ethan. Radiant Alakazam also being used right away. Typically, you like to save this after you've kind of done some work, got some damage counters onto the board already, but focusing on using the Forest Seal Stone, Star Alchemy to search out one more card. Kasten is all in right now on getting established and trying to just get momentum in this game number 2. Wants to close out this best of 3 very quickly.
Yeah, and seeing Alakazam get benched pretty much signals that Professor's Research is getting grabbed off of this Forest Steel Stone. And why not? Draw some more cards, get through the deck. Does have the ability to potentially attach this energy. I'd be interested to see if Kasten wants to commit this water energy. I actually like putting it on the Urshifu. It means you're not forcing yourself to find Melanie later on in the game. Just a good thing to have. Obviously, having it in the discard pile is not bad, but having a Rapid Strike energy will be pretty much guaranteed next turn with that. But choosing to not commit it here, maybe try to find the Rapid Strike energy. But hey, what about having the energy to
I like the idea, right? We know that Kasten wanted to be very aggressive here, so just takes a little bit of a risk, finds the Rapid Strike energy.
And wow, finds that. Is that a 1 of Battle Pass? No, it's a 3 of Battle Pass.
Okay,
Never mind.
3 Battle VIP Pass.
Listen.
I love that. That's the greed ratio, right? Where you like to have the Battle VIP Pass to back you up on turn 1, but you don't fully commit because there was just some other card that you really, really needed, right? 1 Corinna's Focus. Maybe it was the 1 Echoing Horn that decided to work its way into the deck.
3 is a magic number.
It works out. I think that, you know, there's a mathematician somewhere rolling in their grave like, no, you have to run 4. You have to run 4. But it's working out. Kasten just now searching through the deck, figuring out what's the best bench setup. Now that you've got more information about what your opponent is doing, you know that it's an Origin Form Palkia V-Star deck. Are you going to extend and even fill up the bench that much? And Kasten Welsh does pull the trigger on that. Gets another 2 Inteleon V down. Wants to set up the Quadruple Gunner.
Okay. So we will see the Rapid Strike energy come down instead. And look at that, a little cute play you can do with this Urshifu. Strafe for 30 damage, switch out of the active, put this Inteleon V into the active, means you don't need a pivoting card. You did get rid of your other Tower of Waters. You do have 1 more remaining. But you did get rid of now 2, 1 in play and 1 in the discard pile off of that Professor's Research. And after a pretty lackluster start in game 1, Benjamin's at least topping it off with 2 evolutions. Does have that beautiful Origin Form Palkia V-Star from Crown Zenith. And of course the B-Barrel as well. Radiant Greninja, Concealed Cards, Energy Attachment to the active. We're probably going to be seeing a Star Portal this turn, but what else does Benjamin have? Interestingly enough, trying to go for the double B-Barrel setup, it seems. And after, wow, this is really interesting. You're going to commit 3 of your 5 bench spots to playing support Pokemon. I have to imagine you really want to establish maybe a few more attackers, especially if your opponent can Yoga Loop and set up multiple turns, especially on a low HP. I'm scared putting that Bidoof down because it's such a low HP Pokemon that it means a few Double Gunner abilities, and even Double Gunner plus Radiant Alakazam, and you're staring down Yoga Loop on turn number 2. That is maybe the scariest thing that can happen to you on turn 2 is to say, hey, your turn, it's mine. I'm going to take another one.
Yeah, and Benjamin just recognizes, right? I'm looking across the table. I see the Urshifu V with the Rapid Strike energy attached. I see 2 Inteleon V. My opponent has the opportunity to just completely pop off next turn, right? Blow this game wide open. And so Benjamin is committing to the bench in order to thin down the hand, set up for Industrious Incisors, draw a little bit more cards, maybe get a Star Portal at the very least, but now we've got Calyrex V on the bench too, so we have some attackers that can do work, hopefully. Industrious Incisors for 3. Was it a cross switcher, another Ultra Ball?
A switch. It's a little worse than Cross Switcher. Having 2 Cross Switcher would definitely be nice to go after one of these Pokemon, but it is going to be the Star Portal onto the active. Has access to 1 more energy card, and this play is pretty interesting. So this will put this potentially this Inteleon up to 90 on it, which means Inteleon VMAX with 320 HP would mean that how many bench Pokemon? So 230. So would need to have 3 bench Pokemon, which is already there for Kasten to take the knockout. So setting up some math, trying to get through these Pokemon as best as possible. Have to imagine you're going to target down potentially that or the Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. That also works. You can do 240 to that to set the math up later.
I love getting the knockout on the Remoraid. We've been talking so much about how important Octillery is for this deck to put together its combo turns. So taking that out of the equation is massive for Benjamin to maybe maintain an advantage in this game. Kasten Welsh has the Inteleon V in the active, but needs to find the Inteleon V Max. Still needs to find the Urshifu V Max to get the true attacking potential of this deck unlocked. Just double checking the math on Subspace Swell here.
Yeah, so Kasten's in an interesting spot. If he can pull off G-Max Rapid Flow, there's a few places to go. Number 1 in my mind is I think you're always trying to just go after this Origin Form Palkia V-Star. It just can keep firing off high amounts of damage into you. You've got to find a way to deal with it one way, at least putting some damage on it with the... If you're not really playing modifiers, but if you can put some damage onto it, the math does potentially set up. Of course, you've got G-Max Spiral, which does 140, and then a G-Max Rapid Flow 120. That just leaves 20 damage left, which, of course, Double Gunner would be able to get the math there. So I like putting damage there potentially. You could also potentially put some damage somewhere else on the board. It looks like we have a little bit of a dispute going on right now, but it seems like everything is pretty much settled, it seems like.
I know, we haven't seen a Star Portal in ages, Ethan. We got to make sure that everything went correctly there.
It seems like Kasten will finally get to start things off, and great way to start off with this Ultra Ball, but the Remoraid is gone. So for the time being, there's no ability to set up this this Rapid Strike Search. Interestingly enough,
discards the other Remoraid. Is just going to try to make do with what is currently in play, giving up a lot of search, a lot of utility to keep these chains of attacks going by not trying to set up another Octillery. I think perhaps with the threat of just an attachment and another Melanie for another Moonlight Shuriken, it's just a bit too risky to try again on the Remoraid.
And this, I believe I saw a Professor's Research in hand, so this makes me think the other cards are more valuable. Saw a Water Energy as well, and the Urshifu is just going to get evolved up right away. And I mean, this makes sense for Kasten looking at the situation, because you have to look at Benjamin's prize map, right? Benjamin is at 5 prizes right now, but I mean, I say that, but having the 1 prizer down really wouldn't change much. So interested to see what Kasten values over this. I believe the Energy Attachment and Research might just be the last 2 cards in hand, plus 1 other card. We'll see what the last card is. Drapion. Interesting choice to not bench the Remoraid. The math doesn't matter. It's doing Subspace Swell is dealing 240 damage right now, so your Rapid Strike Urshifu is still getting knocked out.
And Kasten's only on 2 copies of Remoraid, 2 copies of Octillery, so that's now completely off the table. You're going to be flying by the seat of your pants here, Ethan, trying to just top deck into the cards you need to keep these double gunners and the energy retrievals, everything up and running to try to close this game 2 out.
Really thinking about that play for Kasten if he's going to want to have that later. And there we are going to see the... oh, yeah, here we go. Painful Spoons, moving the damage counters over. And this is a smart play. Like I said, you want that extra 20 on there so G-Max Spiral down the line can make it work. And there's extra damage on that Urshifu, or on that Radiant Greninja because of the strafe earlier on. Use Painful Spoons, move the damage off, retreat with this Tower of Waters into your Urshifu. You're setting up perfect math. You're maximizing and keeping as much damage on the board as you can. That's the purpose of your Radiant Alakazam in this deck.
Yeah, we think that Kasten is doing some awkward choices, some awkward plays, but is still doing his utmost to calculate all of this math. And you can see how taxing this deck can become when you have to think so far ahead of time, set up all these plays in advance. And yeah, Painful Spoon's going to really help fix that. I like it a lot. Ultra Ball coming through, discarding the Octillery, has completely given up on that Octopus line, just thinning the deck down even further, trying to help out with these top decks. We've got another Nest Ball as well. Yep. Might not be used.
Yeah, can't play the Melody this turn, already played Professor's Research, so this seems to be all that she wrote for
So now that Urshifu VMAX is coming up into the active, we do have Gale Thrust ready to go.
Yeah, we'll pretty much guaranteed see a G-Max Rapid Flow, and that was signaled pretty much from Alakazam. I feel like moving this damage counters off. The problem is, if you don't leave this on, again, Origin Form Palkia, with the amount of bench Pokemon in play right now, is dealing just enough damage to take the knockout onto this Rapid Strike Urshifu.
And then that'll be 3 prizes.
Exactly.
Only 2 prizes remaining. The prize, it's just too short of a clock, I think, for Kasten to really fight back from this position. So it's going to be G-Max Rapid Flow, 120.
So targeting down the Palkia V-Star, and this is the choice. What do you value taking out? Do you value taking the Greninja out? I think on this list, there's not really a lot of hand disruption. I think taking out B-Barrel here is fine at this point. You can just sort of leave the Greninja around for later. B-Barrel is going to have more usage in this matchup, I feel like. Just consistently going to keep that in play. But of course, there is another B-Barrel in play, or rather Bidoof in play right now. But instead, going to go after the Lumineon. This isn't a bad play whatsoever, but
so
of course...
Kasten may be trying to zero in on that Medicham, right? That Yoga loop to bring this one back. Knows that it's going to be very down to the wire, going to give up a lot of prizes from this position, and then going to try to run it back by taking 2 turns in a row.
Yeah, the issue, of course, is that Lumineon can always remove itself out of play with that Aqua Return. Of course, we'll need to find attachment previous on the turn, and then Melanie plus an attachment can get it going. There is also anything like Collapse Stadium you have to be careful of if your opponent's playing. Anything like Penny to pick Pokemon out of play. And that is one of the risks when you don't know your opponent's deck list, when you don't know what they're playing. Things can kind of come out of nowhere. People like to innovate. People like to play different cards. You've got to wonder, does Benjamin have a way to, over the next couple of turns, deny this prizes, deny the Yoga Loop on
Definitely
Kasten's side?
Feels like with this deck, you're existing in that nebulous space, right? The Schrodinger's Penny, trying to take advantage of a lot of decks that just don't have a way to remove damage counters from their bench, are just going to be trying to retreat to mess with your ability to clean up these prizes, and then the Inteleon and the Urshifu are trying to also counteract that counterplay. But when you're in a position like this, right, we've got this heavily damaged Origin Form Palkia V that wants to come up into the active, do some damage, take these prizes. We've got the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX set up as well. But now that Star Portal's already been used, it gets difficult to get the attachment for turn. We have to find Melanie.
Ooh, this is an interesting choice to bring this up. Unless
Pre-commits with the switch as well so that we can use Industrious Incisors for one more card.
Yeah, unless my math is incorrect, this doesn't seem like... Let's find the energy attachment 2 to concealed cards away. So, of course, Subspace Swell right now with 8 bench Pokemon in play is doing enough, but does find the Melanie onto this, deciding I'm not going to give you any prize cards in this case. I'm not going to let you take any prizes on this. Here, I'm going to shut off your Double Gunner ability as well. Be able to use Max Lance for 250 damage. 3 prize knockout. Benjamin going down to just 2 prize cards left. How is Kasten going to respond to this?
Had to take a little bit of risk there, preemptively sending the Ice Rider Calyrex into the active spot, and then the Melanie did come through after all to get that attachment. Big Max Lance. Now just 2 prizes away, can just take down this Inteleon V that's on the bench. There is, I believe, 1 copy of Boss's Orders in Benjamin's list, and now we've just got this Inteleon VMAX that enjoys being the attacker if it kind of gets set up really early before the opponent's done anything, like we saw in game number 1, but ultimately wants to be that support Pokemon with multiple double gunners and a lot of long-term value. And Kasten doesn't have another Urshifu V set up to immediately pivot into another attack. And how else are you going to get into this big 320 HP pool to try to fight back? It's all in on, did my play from earlier with the Lumineon properly set up the Yoga Loop?
Kasten's got his back against the wall. Path to the Peak in play, shutting off Double Gunner. There's no Remoraid down into play, so no ability to search out these special energy, the Rapid Strike energy that are the backbone of this deck, allowing these Pokemon to attack for just a single attachment. Melanie is great, can put this energy on the active, and sure, you can use G-Max Spiral. But from there, what else can you do? Does find the Tower of Water, so that will shut this ability on, and importantly, did find the VMAX, of course. If that didn't get evolved, double cross switcher plus maybe another Melanie would be able to take the knockout on to that Inteleon. It actually only has 200 HP, so it would be straight up knocked out. By the way this board is working, it's got 220, and there are a total of 7 bench Pokemon in play. So the question is, how do you route your prizes? You've got some great opportunities in play. Luminion having 120 damage means that Yoga Loop is a potential down the line with something like a double gunner ability and the Painful Spoons. As that will be the double gunner utilized, of course, going to go after this Luminion. And the Bidoof also only having 60 HP. It's that new one from Crown Zenith with the ability that prevents bench damage from being done to it. So Benjamin has put a few Pokemon that could be liabilities down to play, and especially letting this 3-prize Ice Rider Calyrex take damage this turn from G-Max Spiral. There is a potential for Kasten to put together the exact 6 prizes on these frail, low HP Pokemon, plus this VMAX, to find a way to squeak out game number 2.
This would be such a ridiculous game number 2 if Benjamin is just unable to find the remaining 2 prizes. Not enough damage, right? With just, even with Max Lance, with the Origin Form Palkia, you can't hit 320 damage right away. And if Kasten does put together a crazy 6-prize turn, I'm looking forward to it, Ethan. We know that it is possible, and Kasten has played this matchup in such a way where you're pushing your luck, just trying to say, I'm setting this up, can I get my payoff, do I have enough time, just kind of walking blindly into the forest, hoping that it's going to pay off in the end. We got the evolution onto the Bibarel, the Bidoof, getting a little bit more HP, making it harder to be Yoga looped on.
Yes, that will be a lot more difficult, as you mentioned. I'm just thinking in Benjamin's side, you've got plenty of ways to route this game out, but you want to make sure that you keep control. Don't do something that's going to give your opponent a route back in. Again, like I said before, I think attacking before with this Origin Form Palkia was okay in a sense. Now the problem is both of your Pokemon are damaged, and you've got to make sure you have energies later on in the game. You've just committed your Melanie to remove all your energy off the board, remove it all out of play. How are you going to get another attacker up and running? Double cross switchers in the hand. Do you go after the other Inteleon? Going after the Alakazam doesn't really make any sense because you're still at 2 prize cards, so it just means if your opponent doesn't put down other 1-prize Pokemon, all you're doing is just removing that ability out of play.
Yeah, you're making your job harder by having to take a 7-prize game, and we know that Kasten has a lot of potential to pop off, but one thing I do want to emphasize, Ethan, there's no Octillery, right? There's no Rapid Strike Search to make it easier to find the Rapid Strike energy in the Medicham and actually put that play together. This is the last Tower of Water, so Benjamin might just be able to stick a pat to the peak here.
Looking through the deck to see what options are there. Going to play Irida as a supporter for turn. Grabbing this Lost Vacuum and another card. Could just honestly grab a Pokemon to get rid of with this Lost Vacuum. There's a few good cards in the hand, as that will be the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. Again, it really just comes down to if Benjamin can just continuously attack, Kasten does not have the consistency on the board like Benjamin does with Concealed Cards and Industrious and Scissors. The way things are working out, looks like Benjamin's going to be able to squeak things out, especially with a double cross switcher attachment onto the active. Removing the Tower of Waters means that there's no way for this to pivot as it stands. You know the energy's in hand, but if there's no way to pivot and attack, you're not really getting what you want done, as we will see a Subspace Swell after an Industrious and Scissors for 1 card. Right now, 8 bench Pokemon in play, so that will be 200 damage. There's a lot of pressure on this Inteleon. It means another Boss's Orders, another 2 Cross Switcher will be enough to take the game as long as there's another attacker powered up. And I believe there is still a Melanie left in the deck here for Benjamin.
And so Kasten pushed his luck as much as he possibly could. We've got the damaged Inteleon VMAX in the active. We've speculated about the potential for a Medicham Yoga Loop combo to come through. Run this one all the way back for 6 prizes, but I'm not seeing it now, Ethan. There's no way to search out all the cards that you need without the Octillery at the very least, and now with no Tower of Waters to get this Inteleon VMAX from the active spot. Benjamin Nackman has sealed up game number 2. We've got 17 minutes to decide it all in game number 3 for round 7.
We saw both decks running hot like they should. Of course, game number 2 there, Benjamin's deck did exactly what it wanted to. It got the very powerful Max Lands after setting up Math with turn 2 Star, Portal, Radiant, Greninja, dealing 90 damage to 2 of the Pokemon. And then we saw in game 1, of course, Kasten getting the perfect setup. But I think if you're Kasten, that game should be an exact reminder to you of how important it is to have Octillery in play.
Yes.
Without it, you do not have consistent access to Rapid Strike energy. That card is the MVP of this deck on top of Octillery getting you said card. So maybe Octillery would be the MVP in that case. But it's so important to have that established. Your opponent can pressure it, but at the end of the day, it's the same as these frail supporting Pokemon, even B-Barrel as example. It's an easy prize, sure, but its trade-off is finding you the consistent cards you need to put together your deck. You are a combo deck at the end of the day. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to Yoga Loop these Pokemon, place damage counters with Double Gunner, take extra turns, and take big prize swings with G-Max Rapid Flow. Octillery is the key to your success, especially in a matchup like this, where you need to be keeping pace with an aggressive deck like Origin Form Palkia V-Star.
Cast, because that Remoraid had gotten sniped down, Kasten was forced to take really big gambles heading throughout that second game, pushing the luck, trying to put together these combos on the fly without that additional search option. And now I think that Kasten is just going to have to extend a little bit earlier, put that Remoraid down, and hope you can get the Octillery against all odds.
Let's see these prizes, but Kasten was not sitting on anything incredible.
Two Rapid Strike energies and the Medicham V in the prizes. So this is going to be a very tall order. Once you take that first deck search, look at where your Rapid Strike energies are. We know that back in the day when Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX was one of the best decks in the metagame, it kind of lived and died by how many Rapid Strike energy it had access to, how many G-Max Rapid Flows was it able to chain together. And Benjamin just going to set up now with Origin Form Palkia V in the active spot and has Irida.
Perfect supporter to play for turn 1 means that Battle VIP Pass, which actually
is Greninja,
which Battle VIP Pass, which actually is not in the deck. We did see it was in Benjamin's prize card, so we'll have to settle for the less superior Nest Ball in combination with something like Radiant Greninja. Now, of course, checking your prizes is important because Heavy Ball could be a better card to grab since you have it guaranteed, but it will instead be the Nest Ball instead. And I'm not sure Benjamin's hand, but a play we see players do sometimes back when this deck was a lot more popular with Inteleon is to concealed cards before you play the Nest Ball. That way you have more basic Pokemon in your deck to potentially draw into, and then you can Nest Ball to get even more into play to set up. But Benjamin could just be sitting on a lot of basic Pokemon and is in need of maybe some more cards like Irida or Melody for the following turn.
And even without the Battle VIP Pass, still fully commits to the Radiant Greninja and Bidoof setup. Trekking Shoes into another Trekking Shoes, picks up Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, and now here comes the concealed cards for 2 more. Has the Path to the Peak, so that's really going to come in handy later on in the game. But this looks like a great setup so far. I'd love to see 1 water attachment for this turn, but it looks like that is the only thing missing from this hand.
So I think Benjamin's concern is 1, how do I draw as many cards as I can next turn?
Oh, wait, no, I do see it. I do see the water energy. Do you save this
so that's the question.
Cards?
I think I would not force myself into Star Portal next turn. I think just attaching to the active would be okay to put some pressure onto this Inteleon VMAX.
And you're going second, right? So rule the region.
We feel like we were saying this all the time at Worlds. Nah. But the idea here is saving Star Portal is just a lot better than, I mean, you have Ultra Ball in hand, so you have the guaranteed B-Barrel, or if you need to, you have guaranteed Luminion. So attaching this energy means even if you're getting hit next turn with a G-Max Spiral, that is a trade you will take any day of the week. You trade 2 for 3, take the hits back, you're going to hit back in, potentially with a fresh Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. You can use something like Ride of the High King to make sure you keep your energy in play. And from there, you just have a lot of burst damage potential on the following turn.
But Benjamin opts to keep that energy in the hand, wants to have a little bit more fuel for the concealed cards. Maybe at the end of the day with Melanie, with Star Portal, it doesn't matter too much, but and not having that utility can come back to haunt you. Meanwhile, Kasten has the Irida, is looking through the deck now, taking account of the Rapid Strike energy, sees that there are 2 in the deck, and is already eyeing down this Octillery. Very huge to get the turn 1 Remoraid set up, and now has the Octillery to open this deck wide.
Yeah, and usually having such little special energy that are as important can be detrimental, and it still hurts for sure. But you got to remember, G-Max Spiral is putting the energy back into your hand every turn. So even if a Pokemon gets knocked out, you're still going to have access to that energy, as long as you're returning it and you're not putting it onto something like a Urshifu VMAX, like we saw in game number 2. Has Ultra Ball as well. This is kind of a tough discard, though. You've got a lot of pieces you don't want to discard. Urshifu, VMAX, the Rapid Strike, the Energy Retrieval that you sort of want to keep. I feel like either of those are okay. I feel like you want to keep the Alakazam. It's an important card in every matchup. It is your Radiant Pokemon.
And with the Rapid Strike energy, knowing that you're down on them, you have to rely on Inteleon VMAX a little bit strong. You have to lean on this Pokemon even more. And the Energy Retrieval has to be discarded. So that means that using the Double Gunner over and over again is going to be a bit more difficult. So this is the trade-off where you need the Inteleon VMAX, and it's just going to be Gmax spiral loops from here on out until we can get Urshifu to take over and clock in for a shift.
You can't always get what you want, but you kind of get what you need in this case. Getting the Octillery out is important, so you have that consistency throughout the game. And, of course, you can also grab this Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX, setting up for perfect math onto this Palkia, assuming it evolves next turn into an Origin Form Palkia V-Star. 140 damage with Gmax Spiral. And the question now for Benjamin is, how do you want to play this turn out? Has Melanie in hand? Has Ultra Ball? Of course, that energy didn't get attached last turn. It is still possible to attack, of course. Melanie can power up both of these Pokemon in a single turn. Either this Origin Form Palkia V or another Pokemon deciding to just concealed cards first, and a great find there. Finds this Origin Form Palkia V-Star. The question is, can you put enough damage on board? With a full bench, you're doing 200 damage, and it's pretty good math if your opponent puts down another couple Pokemon on their bench. Again, Ride of the High King can take a knockout. You can always follow up next turn with Max Lands. You could do what Benjamin did in game number 2, which is just switch this Pokemon out. Lots of options here for Benjamin. I'm interested to see how he navigates this turn, and more interested to see what this Ultra Ball gets. Is it B-Barrel or Luminion?
You've got 3 cards in hand, seeing if there's any other way that you can thin this down just a little bit more. There's no Pokemon tools or stadiums in play to even use it on.
I don't think you can grab B-Barrel in this hand. You've got 3 cards. It didn't look like pretty much any of those could get thinned down. You can't play the Lost Vacuum. You can't play any of the other cards there specifically. So, I mean, I don't really have a great look at the hand, but I mean, of course, Luminion is
but Benjamin just opts for the Bibarel. Says, you know what? I'm just going to draw some cards. I have this damaged Origin Form Palkia V-Star in the active spot. Even if things go south, I can just maybe Star Portal, get some attachments, get something set up to pivot. But this is going to be a big handful of cards.
I mean, does still have Melanie as a backup option. Not really exactly what you want to do, especially without any water energy.
For 2.
Listen, gotta play risky sometimes, and it's paying off here for Benjamin. Finds access to the Irida and Escape Rope as well, and this is going to be a tough choice here for Kasten. What do you bring up into the active spot? Do you bring this Octillery up? You just played the entire second game of the set, understanding how poor your setup is without having access to Octillery. Do you bring this Inteleon up? Of course, having
it's dangerous, right? There's only 2 water energy in the discard pile, and you have to think, okay, do I just bring this up? Is there going to be enough energy for a knockout here?
I think this play is fine, specifically because this Rapid Strike Shadow Rider Calyrex is coming up into the active spot. You're not really having too much of a consistent board. Besides this, you know you're prized a few amount of your energy resources, so you really need to value finding those pieces out later on in the game. So we are going to see, it looks like the Irida get played. So this will grab the Nest Ball as well as one of these Water-type Pokemon. Another Palkia seems good to have that down later on. Benjamin's pretty much fully invested in this point, just going for this Ice Rider Calyrex strategy. Because, of course, 2-hit knockout can easily set up math onto this Origin Form Palkia. The problem is, a lot of times you'll see with this deck, you have limited draw later on when your hand gets clogged up with B-Barrel because you're constantly drawing cards with Melanie. You can't string together these big Max Lance turns, kind of run into a position where you're not dishing off enough damage to keep up with the pressure this Inteleon VMAX deck puts on.
So with the Palkia V being found, along with the Nest Ball on the Irida, or even changing the mind here for a different item card, grabs Energy Search instead.
I like this. This is a great play.
So this means no Star Portal this turn?
No, so Star Portal is definitely happening this turn. Your opponent's brought up a Pokemon.
You aren't trying to set it up for later on.
No, you need to start taking prizes now. Otherwise, more opportunity, more time. Your opponent doesn't have an incredible board. They've only got 2 Pokemon in play. They used Irida just to strictly get an attack set up next turn. For all you know, there's not much else going on in this hand.
And there's the Star Portal.
So I don't know. Are there 2 or 3 energies? So there's 2.
There was just 2.
Wow,
and then there was the 3rd found off the Energy Search thanks to Irida. So now we do have, access to Max Lance here if we just want to take the 2 prizes right now. There it is. First 2 prizes going to Benjamin Nackman.
And this is an interesting play, putting the third energy on. Benjamin is pretty confident that this Rapid Strike Inteleon is going to attack something, whether or not it attacks the Palkia V-Star for a knockout, or whether or not it goes after something else or attacks the active. Max Lance is going to come out the next turn. So Benjamin wants to just prevent against some sort of hand disruption, force him against having to find Melanie next turn, says, listen, if worst comes to worst, right, if the worst thing happens, I can just manual attach and commit to a different supporter. I'm not going to be locked into Melody the following turn.
We've got the Rapid Strike Urshifu V onto the bench, and then Professor's Research discards the V Max, going to draw 7 here. And then we can maybe hopefully take a look with Rapid Strike Search to find something else to put the rest of this turn together. But as it stands right now, we've only got a V Max Pokemon in the active. And the Rapid Strike Energy's also already been committed to get around the Professor's Research, so it's going to be a G-Max Spiral once everything is said and done. Here's the Hisuian Heavy Ball coming through.
There's
just a Medicham V.
It's a good grab. You need to get that out of your prizes. Luckily, it was at the bottom, so would have probably gotten drawn earlier as well, but at least could get that out of the prize cards. And if you're Kasten, oh no!
The Rapid Strike Energy's out of reach.
Now, of course, that Hisuian Ball is probably going to get played when it gets taken off the prizes. The prizes are going to
just to shuffle the prizes again.
Yeah. Obviously, Kasten doesn't know the 2 Hisuian Heavy Ball are at the top of the prizes, but it's just one of those cards that you kind of just play because you have it in your hand. You want to fit it out.
Exactly.
Otherwise, Kasten's not going to have a great time. But oh, there we go. Echoing Horn.
Echoing Horn brings Empoleon V back onto the bench, filling that up, but also provides a great target to, snipe down later on.
Seems like we're going to also see Rapid Strike Search. This can find a plethora of cards. I like getting a Stadium here to prevent again Path. I mean, it's a small thing, but when Benjamin was shuffling the hand around, you saw your opponent drop Path to the Peak from their hand, so you know, hey, it might be a good idea to have a counter Stadium potentially coming up, especially if my opponent is able to somehow remove my Octillery out of play. I like to have that piece so I can continuously use Double Gunner, which is an integral part of this deck.
Yep, grabs the Tower of Waters ahead of time. So from this position, Ethan, right, you're just going for G-Max Spiral, trying to set up some math on this big 3-prize Pokemon, the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. We've got Medicham now lurking in the hand. We've got the answer to the Path to the Peak. And Double Gunner also going to be showing itself here to put just a little bit more damage onto the board.
So I'm not sure if Kasten... Okay, I was going to say, you got to put it on bench Pokemon here, so we'll see where this goes after. Is going after the Origin Form Palkia V. I also like putting 20 damage on this Origin Form Palkia V Star so that you can set it up in G-Max Rapid Flow math, but I understand also leaving at 140. You don't want to waste any damage counters. You kind of want to keep the math where it's at so that if you need to, you can just G-Max Spiral again. Speaking of which, Kasten's going to do that at the end of the turn out. 140 damage on this Ice Rider VMAX. Painful Spoon's not used last turn, so completely happy with where the damage is right now. Going to put it action on Benjamin to see what he can do.
Double Gunnered onto the bench and then use the Painful Spoons to move that to the active.
Did do that to active, correct.
And you can see, like, manipulating this math so far ahead of time means that Kasten maintains this macro view of the matchup. And sometimes players do get tunnel vision, right, around just trying to take down one Pokemon. They're overextending for a specific play. And sometimes the style of deck you play puts you in that mindset of being open to the possibilities. So I like that we've got 2 really valuable, heavily damaged Pokemon set up that Kasten can hopefully swoop in and clean up later on. But Benjamin just is going to respond here because these Pokemon are still raring to go. We've still got that attachment from the last turn, potential for Ride of the High King just to set up some damage before this Calyrex VMAX goes down. Still plenty of HP on this Pokemon, so we could even see a retreat, bring something up to pivot. What are you thinking here, Ethan?
I mean, the way the math is shaping out right now, this Ice Rider Calyrex has 160 HP left, so it means another G-Max Spiral plus Radiant Alakazam moving damage onto the active with Painful Spoons will knock it out. And from there, Kasten's just got to take 3 more prize cards, and there's 2 very juicy 1 prize Pokemon sitting on the board. I think with the Echoing Horn too, it's tough. You're now limited that bench space. You don't have a consistent supporter. I feel like at this point you've got to try and attack with one of these Pokemon.
Oh, double cross switcher drawn. This opens up a lot of options. Trekking Shoes going to keep the card off of that. It's an energy search to get 1 more water energy.
Yeah, double cross switcher here is really big because if you target down this bench Rapid Strike Urshifu with the Origin form Palkia, which you can do because there are a total of 8 bench Pokemon in play, so 220 damage being done by Subspace Swell. It means that you go down to 2 prizes, thus your opponent benching another 2 prize Pokemon is a liability and a risk, because if you can find another 2 Cross Switcher or find Melanie and then eventually Boss's orders it before it evolves into a VMAX, that's it. That's your strategy to taking these prize cards.
And that's exactly what Benjamin's going to go for. Has the attachment now onto the Palkia V-Star. There's the double cross switcher. Now just wants to decide what to bring up. Urshifu V is the target that you talked about, Ethan. Hopefully Benjamin doesn't flub this one and go for the Octillery.
I mean, going after the Octillery is also not terrible. It means that going after it means you also route your game up to just take out the Inteleon VMAX and you shut off the consistency that it provides. I think the only way that Kasten's really winning this game is through something with regarding Gmax Rapid Flow, and by taking out the Pokemon that's going to evolve next turn into Rapid Strike Urshifu, it's going to make it a lot harder for him to consistently set it up. So I like going after this, yeah.
We know that there's, Path to the Peak, Medicham, all of these other options available, the flexibility of this Rapid Strike deck, but you just want to answer the most consistent thing that's right in front of you.
Yeah, and as long as Benjamin can put together 3 attacks the turn after this, or 2 more attacks, he'll be able to win this game. Kasten is still at 6 prize cards. The way things work out, Benjamin's just pretty much got to keep attacking, keep dealing damage. That'll be it. He'll be able to win this game. But speaking of which, we looked at the clock here. We got just under a minute left in this match. We might not even be seeing a conclusion to our 3rd match here.
Oh, man. Benjamin, depending on who's turn 0, who has enough attacks ready to go, I think that it will conclude. We've got the knockout there. It's perfect math. You already calculated it, Ethan. Subspace Swell. 2 more prizes now over to Benjamin. And now it's over to Kasten with 20 seconds left on the clock.
So unless Kasten finishes this turn in lightning fast speed, which I don't quite see happening, Kasten will have 2 turns to win this game. And the way it works with Yoga Loop is this is complicated. This happened to EUIC last year. If you Yoga Loop, you steal a turn, but it still counts as a turn of time. So for example,
okay, so if you're turn 1, then you Yoga Loop, then you're also turn 2.
Yeah. So it works that way, but it won't help you if you're turn 0, which means you only get 1 more turn after time is called.
No!
Actually, the way it works, my bad. It actually is helpful because it means you steal your opponent's turn 2. So it is actually good to Yoga Loop, but I mean it's only limited, right? You can't Yoga Loop forever, and the way it's looking right now, there's no real Yoga Loop targets that exist as of right now.
I know. Welcome to incredibly rare and niche interactions with Ethan and Adam, where we're going to go to time and play a Yoga Loop and hope for the best.
I can see the views rolling in already at this point. Anyways, Kasten's got to put together a plan. Time is just officially being called, so he is turn 0. An interaction doesn't come up a lot, but does still have a fair amount of consistency. Of course, those 2 1-prize Pokemon. The issue with Medicham is you can't really put it down before to prep for it because, of course, putting down a 2-prize Pokemon opens up Benjamin to Boss's orders and take the knockout. Can at least go down to 4 prizes this turn, but again, you've got to take 4 prizes the next couple of turns. We are going to see the painful spoons, and I think Kasten understands this. This entire game plan is going to revolve around Yoga Loop. But the problem is, how do you, again, set up this last attacker, set up this last prize?
We have access to Rapid Strike Search, Forest Seal Stone, Tower of Waters to get this Inteleon VMAX out of the active spot once it's done its job. Again, we already know that Benjamin's list does not have the ability to really reach for 320 HP, can do a really big hit and basically threaten to close this game out the turn thereafter.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of Kasten not being able to take any easy single prize knockouts earlier like we saw in game 1 that really set up the threat with Yoga Loop and with Double Gunner. So it's just going to be another Gmax spiral, and it's over to Benjamin.
So if I'm correct about turn rules, there is a world where Kasten can win this game. On his final turn, I say that with quotation marks, right? A normally final turn, Yoga Loop can knock out the... No, but it can't. I don't think it's possible is the problem. Is Yoga Loop, you have to find a way to get enough damage on this B-Barrel to set up some sort of play. We are going to see Lost Vacuum getting rid of Path to the Peak, thinning a card out of the hand. What are the options for Benjamin? Does have Irida in hand. Again, I think priority number one is just getting attackers in play, right? He knows his turns of time. The only way you could lose is if you don't just get your Pokemon evolved, get your Pokemon to be as healthy as possible, and try to just make it so that for some reason, if something weird happens, you've got the ability to re-pressure the Pokemon that you're going to be damaging this turn. Subspace Well will be dealing 200, so there's a bunch of Pokemon and a bunch of different attacks that will be able to close this out if you can even get there.
Exactly. Ultra Ball just discarding cards in the hand, going to fail it. Trying to set up for Industrious Incisors, of course, to draw a little bit more. Okay. Couple cards flew onto they flew perfectly onto the hand that I lost it for a second there, Ethan, about which ones came from the deck. But the players are on top of things.
I think we're okay at this point. I think everybody's on the same standpoint in terms of what we've gotten here.
The concealed cards is still active. The marker wasn't taken off.
Yeah, I don't even think B-Barrel has been used either this turn, so I think the marker on B-Barrel is also incorrect. So
yeah, is still prepping for it, still trying to get the hand thin down. Is that another double cross switcher?
Yeah, I just don't think double cross switcher this turn is what you want to be doing because you're kind of running low on gusting options. The only last gust you'll have is your single copy of Boss's Orders.
Are you going to use it just to draw more from Industrious Incisors?
I mean, the only idea
What are you even looking for?
I mean, the only idea here for Benjamin is the sole reason at this point is you're kind of just accepting, I'm not going to, no, but you're in game 3, you need to try to close this game out and win.
Yeah.
Benjamin has the best chance, in my opinion, to close this game out in time. And by going double cross switcher, you're pretty much putting yourself on a clock with a pretty unthinnable hand. If you have any information about Kasten's deck, you'll know it's not playing a lot of these hand disruption cards.
Yeah, you just punch this Inteleon VMAX that's in the active, and then you're threatening to knock it out next turn.
Yeah.
And then you've got double cross switcher to bring it back up into the active if Kasten tries to pivot or hide behind something, right?
There's so many good options for hitting this active because if your bench space gets opened up as well, you've also opened yourself up to playing Luminion to grab Boss's Orders that way, which of course can still happen if you play the cross switcher, but you don't know if your opponent's got some trick up their sleeve, some sort of card. I think the only fear, if I'm ever in Benjamin's shoes here, is my opponent plays Cheryl and they can Cheryl the damage off the Inteleon.
There's, what is this, 260?
Yeah.
On the Palkia V-Star, so this is set up to get Yoga looped.
It is set up to get Yoga looped, yeah. So that's sort of the issue here is I think Kasten maybe understands I can't win this game, so what I'm going to do is prevent you from winning this game by stealing your turn.
The Yoga steal? Let's go.
I think that's, again, this is how I believe the rules work because an extra turn can't just float out of nowhere. It's going to be stolen, I think, from Benjamin in the best way to light it up. The cards are there, I believe. Actually,
yeah, so Kasten right now is turn 2.
So Kasten is turn 2 right now. So there's one more turn. There's the Tower of Waters, the Rapid Strike Energy, and the Medicham are in the hand.
So now, yeah, with Tower of Waters, we can retreat the Inteleon VMAX. We can bring Medicham V up into the active. We have Rapid Strike Search. Well, no, because of Gmax Spiral, it's already in the hand.
It's already there, yeah.
Yep.
I feel like this is what you... I just don't see a way where Kasten, even with Yoga Loop, can win the following turn, but you've got to at least take the extra turn here regardless.
Yeah, because then you just have Medicham V in the active, which is much easier to knock out with the max lance.
You lose the game if you potentially lose the game if you give your opponent another turn. So you can't really do that. So I'm just gonna look through the deck, and this is essentially your last turn, right? Your technical last turn to look through. Make sure you have all your pieces. Of course, getting an extra turn means you can utilize these abilities like Rapid Strike Search essentially an extra time, so you can grab one more Rapid Strike energy out of your deck. It is the best effect in the Pokemon TCGs to just take an extra turn because you can do everything over again. So it pretty much reads like attack twice, take 2 supporters, use 2 abilities, attach 2 energy. On top of that, in time, in this rare situation, you also get to say, hey, that win condition you have, I'm not going to let you do it. I'm gonna steal it from you.
It's a tie. We're just going to skip you altogether. Unbelievable. After the Ultra Ball discards these, after the Rapid Strike Search, just searching through the deck, finds another Urshifu V. And because you take a second turn, you can also then evolve.
Wait, is this actually... Okay, maybe this is possible here. If the Rapid Strike comes down, the turn of the Yoga Loop...
You play Urshifu V, and then when you Yoga Loop, you get an extra turn. So then a turn is passed, right? So then Urshifu V, you can evolve into Urshifu VMAX, try to set up the Gmax Rapid Flow. So this is going to be Yoga Loop for 2 prizes.
Yeah, the issue here is there is a Melanie. Hold on, wait, is this... Okay, I think if he can navigate this correctly, I think it's there if he can think this through. Yeah, okay.
Wait a minute.
Hold on. He's got the Melody onto this Urshifu. Yoga Loop can happen this turn. It can Yoga Loop the active. The Painful Spoons can move the 20 damage onto the Ice Rider Calyrex. Okay, let's see him do this here. I think the only piece that's missing is the Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. That's not there right now, I think. But the Forest Seal Stone, okay.
Forest Seal Stone, we've got another Rapid Strike Search as well coming up. It's going to be refreshed next turn. So we've got 2 prizes on the Origin Form Palkia V off the Yoga Loop, 3 prizes on the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, and then the final prize comes from the Radiant Greninja.
Yeah, so as long as the turn rules work as correct, so Benjamin's got to promote a Pokemon, so the Pokemon gets promoted. The way this is treated as turn 3 because this is the 3rd turn in time. It usually goes back and forth, but this is the 3rd turn.
And then there's Rapid Energy. There's a G-Max Rapid Flow.
The prize turn. Oh my goodness. Kasten stealing the game out of nowhere.
6 prize combo?
That was insane. Are you kidding me?
You needed your full clock. You needed all of the turns of extra time to calculate this combination. Yoga Loop is ridiculous.
I am blown away. Somebody ban this card. This is broken. What a broken attack. 6 prizes out of nowhere set the entire game up. We thought Kasten was just buying for time for a tie, and here he was, an evil genius plotting something crazy.
Operating on an entirely different plane. I'm getting this win in Game 3, and Benjamin is elated, is completely honored to be on the receiving end of such a ridiculous setup.
That is the craziest play we may have seen on a stream, not just this year, in my entire time casting. How did he put that together?
It took a long time to crunch that, and it all came down to being turn 0. When it came back around to be turn 2, I'm also turn 3, by the way. What a fantastic play, and also a great way to end that set.
That is the clutchest play I have ever seen in terms of time throughout all of the matches that we've streamed and we've covered. Are you kidding me? What? Just
the Painful Spoons, moving the damage, setting up for the G-Max Rapid Flow. Whew. What a... I'm speechless, Ethan. That was so exciting to have an explosive turn like that in the Pokemon TCG. That's what this Inteleon deck is built to do. It can operate at so many different speeds, where sometimes it gets right off to the races with that G-Max Rapid Flow turn 2 that Urshifu has been known for when it was tier 1 way back in the day. If your opponent's playing a slower deck that's just trying to get a lot of support Pokemon set up, you've got the Double Gunner putting a lot of pressure down on those benched Pokemon. And then now in the late game, we have this beautiful potential combo finisher. And we've got to give a special shout out to, of course, Octillery and that Rapid Strike Surge, making it all possible.
See, he heard my notes of wisdom of how important it is to have Octillery down. Yoga Loop may have won the game, Rapid Flow may have closed it out, but the Squid, the Octopus, that's the hero of my heart.
Yeah, so that is going to be a big win, an excellent